While politicians claim the economy is recovering, 3.8 million Australian households are just 90 days away from financial collapse as mortgage repayments, rent, and grocery bills push them beyond breaking point.
So living out here in Australia is crazy. Let me show you. 30 cans of Coke for $50. This block of cheese, nearly $14. $4.90 on offer for chocolate. No thanks. $7 just for some milk. How am I going to survive out here?
The Australian economy is back where it was for the best part of the past 2 years, where the average citizen was going backwards.
Vulnerable Australians are feeling the brunt of the cost of living crisis, often going hungry or without medication because of financial hardship.
The majority of Aussie households need to be taking home more than $100,000 every year to rent a unit without financial strain. It might sound high, but welfare groups say it highlights just how much the cost of living has crept up.
So many people, they just want to stop and lay roots. I represent people like nurses, teachers, everyday Australians that are earning a full-time wage and they can't afford to rent a granny flat.
There will be some impact on fruit and vegetable costs depending on how much of the farmland has been impacted.
In Sydney, a person earning $70,000 has to spend 65% of their income on rent. At $100,000, almost half their income on rent, and is still in rental stress, earning $130,000 annually.
Australia is sitting on an economic time bomb. While government officials boast about falling inflation and a strong economy, millions of everyday Australians are living a very different reality. The brutal truth is that household budgets across the country are stretched to breaking point. Mortgage holders are drowning in debt. Renters are facing impossible price hikes. And grocery bills continue to climb month after month. Most alarmingly, financial experts are now warning that we're just 90 days away from a potential economic meltdown. A point where mass defaults, bankruptcies, and financial collapse could trigger a crisis worse than anything we've seen in generations.
Simon Benson, writing in the Australian newspaper Today, makes the following point, that Australia's living standards are the worst in the developed world. No other developed nation in the world has suffered the decline in living standards anywhere near the magnitude of Australia. No amount of boasting that the household recession has finally come to an end can alter that reality. He continues, fresh OECD data in the form of updated data set on household income shows that even after the marginally better but still slightly grim economic news, Australia's living standards continue to be the worst in the world. And there's no bounce back coming soon, at least not within this decade.
Today, we're going to expose the real state of Australia's cost of living crisis, reveal the ticking time bomb that threatens to destroy millions of families' financial futures, and explain why the government's response has been woefully inadequate. Our analytics show many of you are still unsubscribed. Please hit that subscribe button to support our channel and never miss an update. Chapter 1. The 90-Day Countdown. The latest economic data paints a grim picture of Australia's financial health. While the government celebrates inflation falling to 2.4% in the March quarter, this statistic hides a much darker reality. Food inflation is still running at 3.2%, with grocery prices having risen by over 23% since 2022. Housing costs continue to skyrocket, with the median house price now over 12 times the median annual household income in Sydney and 10 times in Melbourne. Most critically, household savings have plummeted to their lowest levels in decades. The average Australian family now has less than 90 days of financial buffer before they would be unable to meet their basic obligations. Recent surveys show that 42% of households have no savings whatsoever and would be unable to cover an unexpected $1,000 expense. 1 in 3 mortgage holders is experiencing mortgage stress, spending more than 30% of their income on housing. The government wants you to believe that wage growth of 3.4% is outpacing inflation at 2.4%, suggesting Australians are getting ahead. But this ignores the cumulative impact of years of price increases that have far outstripped wage growth. Since 2020, prices have increased by over 20%, while wages have grown by just 11%. This isn't recovery. It's falling further behind in slow motion. Take the Thompson family from Brisbane. John, an electrician, and Sarah, a teacher, earned a combined income of $145,000 in 2020, solidly middle class. Today, despite both receiving small pay increases, their mortgage payments have doubled due to interest rate hikes. Their grocery bills have increased by nearly 40%. They've depleted their savings and are now one unexpected expense away from financial ruin. The Thompsons aren't alone. They represent millions of Australian families who did everything right, worked hard, saved, lived within their means, yet find themselves counting down to financial collapse through no fault of their own.
It is a moment where Australia is going backwards, and this government promised to make it better, instead worse, after the past 3 years. In fact, have a look at this. Life in the past 12 months, 31% of people saying that it is worse. Just 21% saying better. Everyone else basically saying pretty much the same. And of course, if life has been tough and it's still pretty much the same, then that's way over 50%.
Chapter 2. The Housing Nightmare. Housing costs represent the single biggest pressure point in Australia's cost of living crisis. The latest data from the Housing Crisis Snapshot reveals that 70% of renters are experiencing rental stress, while 26.2% of mortgage holders are in mortgage stress. In Sydney, the median house price has reached an astronomical $1.4 million, while Melbourne isn't far behind at $1.1 million. Even in previously affordable cities like Brisbane and Adelaide, housing costs have skyrocketed beyond the reach of average income earners. Rental vacancy rates have plummeted to historic lows of under 1% in most capital cities, giving landlords unprecedented power to raise rents. The average rental increase in the past year alone has been 14.6%, far outpacing wage growth of just 3.4%. Consider the case of Emma, a single mother of two working as a nurse in Melbourne. Despite earning above the median wage, she was recently forced to move for the third time in 2 years after another substantial rent increase. Each move takes her further from her workplace, increasing her commute and childcare costs. She now spends over 60% of her income on rent alone. Or take Michael and Jessica, a young couple who saved diligently for 7 years to afford a deposit on their first home. They finally purchased a modest apartment in Western Sydney in 2021, stretching their budget to the limit. Since then, interest rate hikes have increased their monthly mortgage payment by $950, more than their entire discretionary income. They're now skipping meals to make payments and living in constant fear of losing their home. The government claims to be addressing the housing crisis, but their policies amount to little more than window dressing. Their much-touted Help to Buy scheme will assist just 10,000 households per year, a drop in the ocean compared to the millions in housing stress. Meanwhile, they continue to protect investor tax breaks like negative gearing and capital gains discounts that fuel housing speculation and drive up prices.
Elsewhere across the state, all households earning $70,000 are in rental stress. And with an income of $100,000, rents in the Blue Mountains and North and South Coast are still considered unaffordable.
Chapter 3. The Grocery Shock. While housing costs represent the biggest single expense for most households, it's the relentless rise in grocery prices that's pushing many families over the edge. The latest data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics shows food inflation running at 3.2%, significantly higher than the overall inflation rate. But this figure masks the true impact on everyday Australians. A basket of 9 basic grocery items that cost $41 in 2019 now costs $56 in 2025. A 37% increase in just 6 years. Fruit and vegetable prices have been particularly volatile, with some staples seeing price increases of over 50%. Walk into any supermarket in Australia today, and you'll see the evidence with your own eyes. A head of lettuce that cost $2.50 in 2020 now costs $5.80. A kilogram of beef mince has gone from $12 to $18. a loaf of bread from $2.80 to $4.50. These aren't luxury items. They're basic necessities that families can't do without. The major supermarket chains continue to report record profits while Australians struggle. Coles and Woolworths have seen their profit margins expand during the cost of living crisis, suggesting they're not just passing on higher costs, but actively increasing their profit take. Food bank usage has increased by 67% in the past year alone, with middle-class families now making up a significant portion of those seeking assistance. A recent survey found that 38% of households are regularly skipping meals to save money. 42% have switched to lower-quality food options, and 27% report going hungry at least once in the past month because they couldn't afford enough food. The government's much-touted price monitoring scheme has proven toothless, with no actual power to control or limit price increases. Food industry experts are warning that grocery prices are likely to remain elevated or even increase further throughout 2025 and beyond.
Bro, the cost of living in Australia is completely lad. Look at this, cuz. Look how cooked this shit is. $8 for milk. Wow, lad. Cuz, $9 for butter. Wow. Lad, $50 for a pack. What the fuck? Look at this block of cheese, $14. I was making this when I was working at Domino's, lad. What the Wow, lad. Cuz, $2.20 just on groceries for the week for me and my missus. Like, that's absolutely cooked, bro. What the
Chapter 4. The Debt Trap. Perhaps the most alarming aspect of Australia's cost of living crisis is the explosion in household debt. Australia now has one of the highest household debt-to-income ratios in the world at over 180%. The average mortgage has increased by 35% since 2020, while wages have grown by just 11% over the same period. This widening gap between debt and income is creating a dangerous trap that millions of Australians cannot escape. Interest rate hikes have pushed mortgage repayments to record levels. A typical Sydney homeowner is now paying $1,450 more per month on their mortgage than they were in 2021. For many families, this represents more than their entire discretionary income. But it's not just mortgages. Personal loans, car loans, and credit card debt are all increasing as households struggle to make ends meet. Buy now, pay later services have seen their customer base expand by 42% in the past year, as desperate Australians turn to these services just to cover basic necessities. Lisa Nguyen, a registered nurse with 15 years of experience, told us, "I never thought I'd be struggling like this. I work full-time at the hospital and pick up extra shifts driving for Uber on weekends just to cover my rent and bills. I've maxed out my credit cards, just buying groceries and paying utilities. If anything happens, if my car breaks down or I get sick and can't work, I'll be completely ruined." The debt trap creates a downward spiral that's nearly impossible to escape. As households take on more debt to cover essential expenses, their financial resilience decreases. Each new bill, each price increase pushes them closer to the edge. Eventually, they reach a breaking point where they simply cannot service their debt any longer. When this happens to enough households simultaneously, as financial experts warn could happen within the next 90 days, the consequences could be catastrophic. Mass defaults would trigger a cascade of economic impacts: banks tightening lending, property values plummeting, consumer spending collapsing, businesses failing, and unemployment rising. This is the economic meltdown that now looms on Australia's horizon. Conclusion: Australia's cost of living crisis isn't just a temporary challenge. It's a ticking time bomb that threatens to explode within the next 90 days. The combination of crushing housing costs, relentless food inflation, and unsustainable household debt has pushed millions of Australians to the brink of financial ruin. The government's response has been woefully inadequate, focused more on managing headlines than addressing the structural issues driving the crisis. Their claims of a strong economy ring hollow to the millions of Australians who are skipping meals, unable to heat their homes, or living in constant fear of losing their housing. What's most concerning is that we're now approaching a potential tipping point, a moment where the financial pressure becomes so great that mass defaults trigger broader economic contagion. The 90-day countdown has begun, and without dramatic intervention, Australia could face an economic meltdown that destroys the financial futures of an entire generation. The question now is whether our leaders will acknowledge the true scale of this crisis and take the bold action needed to defuse the time bomb, or whether they'll continue to fiddle while ordinary Australians burn. To watch our latest investigation into Australia's crises, click the video here. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe now for unfiltered truth about what's really happening to our country. The mainstream media won't tell you these stories, but we will.